We are recording.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hassan Bennett. I am the interim chair. I will be facilitating this meeting. This is a CPOC commissioners meeting, and it is now hereby called to order. The time is 6:07 p.m. This public meeting of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission was properly advertised pursuant to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. With that being said, commissioners, I will begin to call roll. When I say your name, please acknowledge your present by whatever way you would desire. Commissioner John Solomon.
Commissioner John Solomon, present.
Commissioner Hakeem P.A.
Commissioner Hakeem PA, present.
Commissioner Melanie DeBose.
Commissioner DeBose is present.
I am, as it said, my name is Hassan Bennett, and I am present. With that being said, has anyone had a chance to review the agenda for tonight's meeting?
We have.
Do I hear a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I move that the meeting agenda for tonight be approved.
Does any, that is Commissioner DeBose motioning to approve tonight's agenda. Does anyone second that motion?
Commissioner PA seconds the motion.
Commissioner PA seconds that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes. Did everyone have a chance to review the January minutes?
We have.
Do I hear a motion to approve the January minutes?
I
Chair,
move.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I think we mean the February minutes. Is that correct?
Yep.
I apologize, the February
No worries.
minutes. Do I hear a
Yep.
motion to approve the February minutes?
I move that the February minutes be approved.
That is Commissioner Melanie DeBose motioning to approve the February meeting minutes. Does anyone second that motion?
Commissioner PA seconds the motion.
Commissioner Hakeem PA seconds that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 That's two. Three. John, you with us?
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
with you.
All right, cool. I didn't hear you. I apologize. And with that, we will pass the meeting over to our executive director, Ms. Tanya McClary.
Great. Good evening, everybody, and I'm glad to see all the commissioners. So if we can pull up our slides, that would be awesome. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yep.
We
Can everybody
can.
see the presentation?
Okay, great. If you can't hear me, let me know and I'll put my headphones on. Awesome. So we're coming to you this evening with, we can go to the next slide. So as always, we always want to remind you of the mission of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. It's to oversee and investigate the conduct, policies, and practices of the Philadelphia Police Department. So CPOC currently receives complaints of police misconduct. We audit and monitor internal affairs, investigations, and policy disciplinary processes. We sit and vote on PBI panels at the police discipline hearings. We conduct oversight of police shootings. We analyze police data, develop policy recommendations and reports, and engage in outreach and training. So why is civilian oversight necessary? It protects human rights, it promotes constitutional policing, it increases public confidence and trust in the police, it builds bridges between law enforcement and the public, it supports effective policing, it ensures greater accountability, and it enhances risk management. So I wanted to give you all an update about the seating of the new commissioners. So as you know, we've been talking to you about this every month, and it's exciting because we're finally getting to the end of this cycle of appointing new commissioners. And so there was a selection panel that was composed of 3 appointees from City Council and 2 appointees from the Mayor's office. I'm just reminding you that Anton Moore and Stanley Crawford were the mayoral appointments, and by Bilal Kayam, Christina Vega, and Caroline Stack were the 3 members appointed by City Council. So on Tuesday, March 8th, the selection panel hosted a public meeting in person at the Community College of Philadelphia, and it was also streamed online to introduce the new commissioner candidates and to invite public feedback. And so we want to thank everybody that attended. It was so well attended in person. The room was almost standing room only, and then we had a lot of participation online. We were very grateful to Councilmember Jones's office, who supported the selection panel in hosting these events. And this is a wonderful picture. As you see, we have our current commissioners, all 4 of them were there. We were so excited. And we had the 4 candidates, the candidates there. And so this is a great picture, and they were there with Councilmember Jones. So I wanted to let you all know who the proposed new commissioners are. This slide deck is available, will be available on our website, so you can go back and read their resumes, but I just want to let you know who the 4 people are that have been proposed so far. So there's Michelle Enix Kinney. She would be representing the 12th Police District. She's a consultant and founder of Excellence by Design Consulting, LLC. And she has over 20 years of experience in crafting targeted strategies and driving organizational change across corporate communications, marketing, corporate culture, etc. And so you can read the rest of her bio. Next, we have Gilberto Gonzalez, who will be representing the 26th district. And so Mr. Gonzalez is a senior recruiter for the Community College of Philadelphia. He's a highly skilled college recruiter with a proven ability to build strong relationships and partnerships with diverse communities. He also has expertise in mentoring and community development and fostering culturally inclusive collaborations. And so you can also read the rest of his bio. Next, we have Malika Rahman, who would be representing the 8th Police District. Ms. Rahman is a criminal justice professor and curriculum coordinator at the Community College of Philadelphia. Her professional journey has involved substantial community interaction and leadership in criminal justice education, community engagement, and commitment to reform in Philadelphia. And so you can also read more about her. She was a member of she's a member of the Philadelphia Police Department chaplains. And our last candidate is LaTanya Whitehead from the 24th District. Ms. Whitehead is a program liaison and manager at Shalom Inc. in Philadelphia. Ms. Whitehead has expertise in developing protocols, evaluating prevention strategies, and maintaining strong community partnerships. So these are the 4 people that have been proposed to be on the commission going forward. And so I want to just remind you all that there are actually 5 vacancies. And so just reminding you of that because there will be one more person that needs to be seated and slated potentially for the commission. But I want to give you an update about what has happened since March 18th, just to bring you all up to speed. And so resolution for the 4 recommended candidates were introduced to City Council on Thursday, March 20th on the final passage calendar. And so as I was stating, there were 5 vacancies. So the selection panel convened itself again, and they're going to be presenting an additional candidate for consideration to fill the final vacancy. And so once that person is named, a public hearing will be held similar to the one that took place on March 18th, allowing the public to meet the 5th candidate and ask them questions. And that public hearing is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, April 2nd at 5 p.m. So please stay on the lookout. We are shooting for that date. We are still trying to just confirm a few more things. So tentatively put that on your calendars for April 2nd at 5 p.m. and it will be virtual. So the entire hearing will be virtual. And so you will have that same opportunity, members of the public, to ask questions of that 5th candidate and also to meet that 5th candidate. So we wanted to make sure that people understood that you will have that opportunity to engage with the recommended 5th commissioner. So I also want to talk a little bit about the city council confirmation process. If you remember in some of my other reports, we have reported out that there was going to be a committee of the whole hearing about the 5 candidates. So we recently learned that city council will be limiting the number of committee of the whole sessions scheduled while council members are attending budget hearings, which began this week. So this is a new update. Because the process took a little longer than we had planned. You know, we had really hopefully wanted to have this done maybe January, February, but since it's still going into April and now in March and April, and we're in budget season, that process is not going to be the way that we had reported it. Because as I stated, city council is limiting the amount of committees of the whole hearings that are going to be taking place during the budget season. So the 4 resolutions for CPOC candidates are being held by their sponsor, who is Councilmember Jones, until the 5th commissioner candidate has been selected. And once that happens, what the final confirmation will look like is that once the selection panelists have confirmed their 5 selected commissioner candidates, each candidate will go before city council during a stated meeting, where the public will have the opportunity to provide additional comments. So I just want you all to know, members of the public, you know, you were able to participate on the 18th. You're going to able to be participating on April 2nd. And you're also going to have another opportunity to comment on the candidates at the stated meeting. And once the public comment is completed, council members will consider a resolution to finally confirm each of the commissioner candidates. And the date of the stated meeting has not yet been determined. So for those of you that follow us on like social media, come to our web pages, as soon as we have that date nailed down, we will alert you so that you have an opportunity to, if you would like to bring additional public comment. And so we want to make sure that you all know that this process is a lot of public feedback built in. And so CPOC is I'm excited to support that, and the ability for the community to weigh in on the commissioners, which is a very important function in the city of Philadelphia. So that's my last slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the chair to see if there's any questions.
Commissioner PA, do you have any questions regarding the proposed candidates?
No questions.
Commissioner DeBose, do you have any questions regarding the process of approving the proposed candidates?
I have none.
Commissioner John Solomon, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Tanya, the floor is back yours.
And I also do make a shout out. It'll be coming up soon. Some more dates for you all to be looking at. As you all know, the city is in the process of negotiating with the Fraternal Order of Police, their new police contract. And as you all know, or if this is the first time you're hearing it, CPOC is really fighting to be able to do the independent investigation that over 500,000 community members in Philadelphia said they wanted us to do. So there will be some dates related to that, some more opportunities for you to learn how these investigations will impact the community, et cetera. So please look out for those dates, as there will be some educational opportunities coming up for people to learn more about that process of CPOC getting an independent investigation and also supporting our efforts. So we are still going on. The Fraternal Order of Police just concluded, from what we understand, their portion of presenting their terms and the things that they want, and that the city will be gearing up in either for May and potentially even some more hearings in June. And so we will keep you abreast of that process as much as we can, and how you all can support us getting that and other things that we need in the process. And so with that, I will turn it over. I believe we're going to Odyssey policy. I'm sorry, no, we're going to complaints. I will turn it over to Director Guy, who will talk to us and give us our complaint report for the month.
Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to put quickly in the chat. Our February complaint report is on the website. I just put it in the chat if you'd like to read the full report. I'll move on to the next slide. There you go. So just reading a few of the complaints that we received in February to give people just an idea of some of the complaints that we saw. Sorry, I'm just making my screen bigger so I can actually read it. So here are three of them that we received in February. The complainant reported that the police officer entered and searched their home without providing proper identification or paperwork. The officer said that the landlord gave them permission to enter the home since the complainant was illegally living there. The door was broken after the police left the scene. Another complaint, the complainant was attending the Super Bowl victory, go Birds. They were at the parade and went and used the bathroom. Their backpack was reported as suspicious and was picked up by police. The complainant reported arguing with two officers to get their backpack back. Upon getting it back, they discovered that their lunch was missing from said bag. Another complaint we got, the complainant went to the district to file a police report. The officer at the window told them that they could just call 911 to file the report. The individual asked why they would do that since they were there physically in person. The situation escalated and the officer became hostile, yelling at the complainant. The complainant was eventually able to find a supervisor and help them file the complaint. So in the month of February, CPOC referred 11 complaints to Internal Affairs, and this just breaks down the demographic data of those 11 complaints, the race distribution, as well as the gender distribution. So far in our calendar year, 2025, so that's just January and February right now that we're reporting on, we've referred 28 complaints to Internal Affairs, and this shows the demographic breakdown for both race as well as gender. Moving on to the next slide. This is a breakdown of all the allegations of those 28 complaints. And just as a reminder, as we always say, one complaint can have multiple allegations. We're seeing just in our data so far that lack of service is the highest percentage and departmental violations is second in line. And this is pretty consistent. I think they were maybe reversed in January, but that was only 1 month of data. But we're sort of back to what we typically see in the overall year percentage. Going to the next slide. This is a breakdown of the subcategory of departmental violations. Since that's sort of a nebulous term that maybe people might not understand, here's some of the most highest percent of those departmental violations. Here, there's some of the sub 10 categories. So not other specified, as well as PPD directive violations, missing property, so on and so forth. On this next slide, we have a breakdown of the zip codes of where complaints have happened throughout the city. So this is where the incident occurs, not necessarily where the individual lives. And you can sort of just see where we see sort of our darker colors is where we've seen more complaints in January and February. And I'm sure this map will change and grow as we move through the year and report on more months. And that is, I believe, the end of my slides. Commissioners, if there's any questions.
Commissioner DeBose,
I have
do
none.
you have any questions for
I have none, Chair Bennett.
Commissioner Dobbin?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
You said you know?
I didn't hear it when you said commission. I didn't hear the second part, but I'm assuming it was me. No, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner PA, do you have any questions? Taking it, we've lost Commissioner PA. Danny, I have a question, and I don't know if you're able to answer this question, or maybe someone else will be able to answer this question regarding our follow-up. As the complainants move through stage at the stage. I know we sit in and observe the investigation, we observe the interviews, but once the investigation moves to past the investigational stage, do we make follow-ups with the complainant?
We don't typically do that. And I also just want to clarify one thing that you said. So we don't sit in on interviews. We don't monitor every case just because of our resources and our ability. I mean, last year we submitted 215 complaints. We don't have the capacity to monitor every one of those complaints. So we're really only targeting specific complaints that we're monitoring. In terms of sort of the follow-up, once we've referred the complaint to internal affairs, it's sort of in their wheelhouse because transparently, they don't always inform us when the next step is moved on. We, of course, provide the information to complainants as we find out, and we inform every complainant when they call us if they have questions or want us to check in on the status of a complaint case, just to give us a call, and we can always follow up and ask internal affairs. But they're going to know the most information because, again, they are doing the investigation of the complaint. So like when it's closed out, they don't traditionally, once a complaint is closed out, they don't send the information to the complainant until everything's gone through the discipline process.
And just so you know, that is one of the things, Commissioner, that I'm looking into. It's just as Director Guy said, it's just that the process is so convoluted, but I would like to be sending something to the complainant once it's closed because it came into our office. So we have been in discussions about what that might look like. You know, it might be a letter from us saying that you know, your case has been closed. Here was the outcome. They should have already gotten that from PPD, but we're having those conversations just because, as Director Guy said, sometimes by the time we learn about it, it may not be as ripe as they might have already been notified. So there's some breaks in the system. And we're looking at how we can potentially close some of those gaps in the system or be more responsive. So we appreciate the question.
Yeah, and I'll just add also, like, as we sort of push and develop our systems, the biggest push is really just trying to get PPD to share as much information with us. And I think that's sort of one of the big pieces of the police contract we're always fighting for is just the information and making sure that we're up to date so that we can do services like that. I think that is a long-term goal for us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. There's no other questions. I will pass off to Director Zajac.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My internet connection seems to be not great. So if I have to turn my video off, I apologize in advance. I always start my presentations talking about one of the main functions of my division, which is our audits of investigations into complaints against police, just to refresh everyone on what we do and what it all entails. Our unit, our division, receives all case file materials that are provided to us by internal affairs, so that we can review the investigation and understand how it went and make any recommendations for changes to the investigation that we think might be necessary or important for the integrity of the case. So we review interview memos, body worn camera footage, if applicable for the investigation, everything that's in the case file we get access to. So we have 11 business days to complete our review and notify internal affairs if we have feedback on any individual investigation. We make lots of different kinds of recommendations. An example would be, we would recommend the investigator should interview all officers that were present during the incident or explain in the report of investigation why these officers were not interviewed. Typically, there's an explanation or a good reason for an investigative step that an investigator did or did not take. We just want to see, basically have the investigator show their work and tell us why they did the things they did in the investigation. This allows our staff to review these investigations while they are still open and give feedback about things we think could be improved before the case is finalized. We use the same series of questions to assess each case so that our reviews are consistent over time. That allows us to collect a lot of data and track things that change throughout the course of our process. So for the cases that we completed in February, that's what we'll be covering tonight in these slides. We completed 34 audits in the month of February. We received a total of 48 cases from internal affairs. We were able to complete 34 reviews. So that's about a 70% rate of us being able to complete these reviews. 48 cases from internal affairs in a short month of February was a lot. So we did our best to keep up with the volume as it was coming in with the small team that we do have. So we were, of the 34 cases that we reviewed, 33 of them were full internal affairs investigations, and only one of them was a divisional case. That means a complaint that had relatively minor allegations of misconduct. And it was the officer's first complaint of that type. So those cases are typically kicked back to the division level so that the officer's direct supervisor or captain can review the case and counsel the officer in about the circumstances of that situation. So again, only one of those cases in February, the rest were full internal affairs investigations. I decided to, in these slides, cover a few data points that I don't typically report on in these presentations, just so everyone can get a sense of the variety of information that we collect and then some possible uses for it. So you can go to the next slide, Danny. This is something I do often report on in these slides, the case classification. So this case classification is given to a complaint when it first goes to internal affairs. And that is one of the things that helps determine whether it's given the full investigative treatment or if it's going back to the officer's captain to be handled at the division or district level. So of the cases we reviewed in February, sorry, I have the wrong month at the top of the slide there. We had 8 lack of service investigations and 8 physical abuse investigations that we looked at. Last month, the prior month to this, departmental violations cases were the highest. And this was a surprising data point for me because we don't often see this volume of physical abuse cases. That's not typically in the higher range of the cases that we're looking at. So this was kind of surprising for me to see. I broke down of those 8 physical abuse cases, what the sub-classifications were, so you can get a sense of the types of physical abuse allegations that were being investigated in those cases. So most of them were forcibly pushed or slammed investigations or allegations. There was a forcibly pulled / dragged, 1 taser allegation, and 1 punch allegation. So that's the breakdown of the physical abuse cases that we looked at in February. And then as far as the lack of service cases, those are always on the high end of the cases that we are reviewing, also on the high end of the types of complaints that we receive at CPOC that we refer for investigation. And the breakdown there, the highest number being failure to provide service or take police action. So you can go to the next slide, Danny. So the data from February shows that the district of occurrence for the incident and the district of the complainant residence don't always align. And this was kind of surprising as I was digging into the data. I'm not sure why I was assuming this, but I was kind of assuming that people would be encountering officers close to home and making complaints about those interactions, but the data isn't showing that that's the case. So the most frequent district of residence for the cases that we reviewed in February wasn't a district at all. It was residents who actually do not reside in Philadelphia. So that was the most common residents of the complainants in the cases that we were reviewing. Whereas as far as district of occurrence for these cases, the 19th district had the highest volume of cases that we reviewed in February. So this was an interesting data point to sort of uncover. And it can help us think about outreach efforts in the future. If the highest volume of cases that we're receiving or that we're reviewing in a month are for people who don't live in Philadelphia, maybe there's some outreach that can be done to help educate the residents of Philadelphia about the complaint investigation process and options that people have if they want to file complaints about interactions with officers. You can go to the next slide, Danny. And just as you saw in the slides that Danny presented earlier about demographics of complaints that CPOC received, we do collect demographics on the audits that we do, so we can take a look at of all the complaints against police coming into internal affairs, what's the breakdown of demographics for the complainants. So of the 34 cases that we reviewed in February, the majority of complainants identified as Black/African American. And in the data for complaints that Danny reported on earlier, the majority of complainants had a race listed as not specified, and only 2 of 11 identified as Black/African American. So this is another place we can look to the data for possible outreach strategies in the future, seeing which communities are being represented in the demographics of the complainants in these cases that are going through the investigative process, and see, are there communities that we want to target some outreach efforts to broaden the range of people who are participating in the complaint process. So another data point that I do often talk about in these reports is whether the investigations were completed within 90 business days. So in the month of February, the cases we reviewed, about 50% of the cases were completed by the investigator within that 90 business day guideline. That is lower than the rate in January. So in January, it was 80% of cases were completed within 90 business days. I feel like 80% I don't feel like it was about 80% in all of the cases that we reviewed in 2024. So 80% seems to be the typical rate of compliance for this 90-day guideline, and February's set here was a little unusual, so I dug a little deeper to take a closer look. So Danny, you can go to the next slide. So of the 16 cases we reviewed in February that were not completed within the 90 business days, our team, after reviewing them, felt that only 2 of them had clear explanations for this delay. This is really low. It's low compared to what we saw all through 2024. And so this is something I wanted to get a closer look at. So when we're looking for this 90 business day completion, they are required to include an explanation for why it didn't meet the 90-day guideline. And we're looking for something clear that says an officer was out sick long-term and couldn't be interviewed, or we need additional time to track down witnesses, and there's letters and contact attempts that are present in the case file showing that work was happening throughout that time frame. We had a couple of extreme examples, like years passing between what appeared to be the final investigative step in the case and the case being closed. There's another similar example of a 6-month gap between what appeared to be the end of the investigation and the case being closed. So this is helping me develop some questions about what checks are in place at Internal Affairs to track open cases, and how they identify older cases that are kind of sitting without work being done. So this is a point for further research, and is helping me understand where we can ask more questions and use this oversight that we have of these cases to report back and understand what checks are in place for the work that they're doing there. So you can go to the next slide, Danny. So we spend a lot of time watching body-worn camera footage. It's a very time-consuming process. A 20-minute interaction can produce hours of body-worn camera footage that needs to be reviewed. So we spend a lot of time collecting information about that video footage that we watched. So 5 of the cases that we reviewed did not have body-worn camera footage available. In about half of the cases that had body-worn camera footage available, all allegations and violations that were present in the footage were accounted for in the investigation. However, in 12 cases, our review of the footage found additional allegations, additional violations of policy that needed to be addressed within the case. So that's something we pay a lot of attention to. We really want the investigators who are reviewing the body-worn camera footage to be capturing everything that's present and making sure that officers are being held accountable or retrained when they are doing problematic things or violating policies, even if those policies are minor. Something we're paying extra attention to now is body-worn camera violations. Officers are supposed to be keeping their cameras in standby mode whenever they are out and interacting with the public. And then when they start an interaction, they hit the button on their camera to start the recording. There's a 60-second buffer period that then gets included and is captured before that officer hit that button on their camera. So when we see a full 60-second buffer period at the beginning of footage, we know the officer was properly operating their camera. When that's not present, we know they were doing something wrong and not properly operating their camera. So we're paying attention to that and calling that out so that officers can be using this really important tool for accountability appropriately when they're out interacting with members of the public. Next slide, please. Okay, about half of the cases we reviewed in February had additional allegations or violations that needed to be addressed. Those are some that we would have uncovered during body-worn camera footage review or elsewhere in the investigation. There's a total of 29 missing allegations that we called out. And some examples were failure to activate body-worn camera properly, as I discussed. Other misconduct unspecified. There was a taser allegation that wasn't actually addressed in an investigation when that was an allegation that was made by the complainant. So we're really just going through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure every allegation made by the complainant is being properly addressed. And then things that weren't alleged but were present are also being addressed. The example I have at the bottom, we made a recommendation to change a lack of service allegation to an other misconduct allegation. And that was because it was a really serious situation where someone was not receiving proper service from an officer in a really stressful encounter after a car accident. So it was just sort of the degree of conduct that we were seeing on the footage. We felt like a lack of service allegation didn't feel serious enough to cover the conduct that we were observing in the body-worn camera footage. So that's something I wanted to point out because we have the ability to make that type of recommendation now. You go to the next slide. Of the 33 full investigations we looked at, we had feedback and recommendations for 75% of those cases. So we sent memos for all of those back to the investigator for additional review. This is pretty much on par with our stats from last month, where we had feedback for about 71% of those cases. And in 2024 in total, we had feedback for 64% of cases. So we're hovering right around the same level. But something we've been noting is that we're seeing a lot more clear explanations in the reports of investigation that we're reviewing, and we're definitely seeing some positive change in the reports and the cases that we're looking at, and trying to figure out how we can quantify that with the data and be more clear about that is kind of a next step. Next slide, please. Another data point that I don't typically report on, but I wanted to mention and highlight here is that in those 34 cases that we looked at, there are 86 individual officers involved who had allegations and findings against them. And there were 3 officers who actually appeared in more than one case in the month of February. So that was interesting to see when you start recognizing the names. That's something I want to pay attention to and sort of look into. So of those 3 officers who appeared in more than one case, 2 of them appear to be partners, and they were involved in 2 complaints related to school dismissal. So we know school dismissal times are unique. They present unique challenges, and maybe more likely to produce caps because there's a lot of people involved and, they can be a little bit, unpredictable. So I'm keeping an eye on this data point, and see if we could steer any policy work or explainers here. It's raising questions of like, what is PPD's policy around school dismissals? Is there any work CPOC can do here? So continuing to look at themes of these cases, if there are officers who are repeating in any of them, these are all things information we can gather and then take additional steps on if that's appropriate. Next slide, please. And so that kind of concludes the audit data that I wanted to present, just to talk a little bit more about next steps in the division. So we are in the process of collecting responses from PPD for all the case audits we did in 2024. I think we only have 1 left and it's due to us like next week and it's coming. So we are sorting through all of the data. I share a lot of data every month at these and there's a lot to go through. it's been quite a process. So we're getting closer every day, but as we're continuing to do these audits every day and combing through all the data from last year, there's a lot to do. So I want to give a huge shout out to the team. These audits are really intensive, time consuming. Body worn camera footage takes a long time to go through. So I just really want to stress the intensive nature of this work, and the team who does it day in and day out is incredible. They're doing incredible work. So in development still, we are trying to get reestablished within PPD's directive review process to make sure we are understanding when they're updating their policies and what information from those updates we should be aware of and sharing with the community. And we're looking toward developing a process to track all CPOC policy recommendations over time. And of course, our body worn camera audit project is underway, where the team is finding time somehow to be reviewing additional body worn camera footage. And we're trying to track some compliance metrics when it comes to how officers are using these cameras. So I think that's the end of my slides. And I feel like that was a lot of information. So if there are any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer whatever I can.
Thank you, Ms. Denise. I'm going to start with the one that always has questions for you. Commissioner Melanie DeBose, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I have one of both.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, my comment is to express my appreciation for the work that you and your team are doing and your commitment. From our perspective, we're really getting a sense of the level of accountability that the PPD is being held to. And I guess I would presume from their perspective, is forcing them to be more meticulous about their work, because there really is an oversight commission and it is engaged. The question that I have, so thank you for all of that.
Yeah.
And please convey our thanks to your team. The question that I have is, you talked about the fact that there's about, there was an 80% coverage this month of the complaints. And you also expressed the fact that that's due to limited staff and limited time. Am I correct about both of those?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so the 20% that you don't get to, are you using a criteria to, and I want to say this gingerly, to select which cases you might take time in, or are you just getting them as they come along until time runs out? And you may have answered that already. I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, I did not answer that already. So yeah, so right now, I mean, I think there's different ways it could be done. Right now, I'm doing a random selection. So when I get a batch, if I get 10 in a day from internal affairs, I'll do a random selection and typically aim to select 80%.
Okay.
And that's the goal, but that can also depend on things like, you know, staff vacations that are coming up or the workload of other things that we're trying to get the division to do. So, you know, now being the auditing, policy, and research division, we want to be spending some time on some policy work and other types of things. So yeah, it's definitely, it's just kind of been a trial and error process of just understanding what the team's capacity is for the volume of these cases while trying to tackle other projects as well. So yeah, it's definitely a learning as we go, but right now it is random selection of these cases. So I figured looking at a variety of the investigations is beneficial because we want them to be giving their best attention to every case, regardless of the types of allegations that are present. So I think understanding how they're addressing the breadth of cases that come in is helpful for that. But yeah, I think it's a work in progress. And if, you know, some other way to select these cases ends up being something else we want to try, I think that's also a possibility.
Okay, thank you. Does the 20% get addressed in the following month, or does it, in a manner of speaking, fall by the wayside?
Yeah, they kind of fall by the wayside. We still have access to everything for the cases. So if there was a time where we had more hours or more people or something, you know, we still have the materials. But yeah, we don't go back to previous months and review them because of that 11 business day review period that we have. We're really looking at them to make the recommendations and move on to the next ones that come through.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, we are going to be fighting to get the kind of resources, human and financial resources that are necessary to make it possible to review every case with the same level of intensity and fervor. So thank you again to you and your team.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hakeem PA, do you have any questions? Ms. Janine.
No questions.
Commissioner John Solomon, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Janine?
No, I do not. Thank you.
I would like to say thank you first and foremost to you and your team for always coming with a thorough and quite interesting presentation. My question, and I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this currently, but my question is, out of the out of town complaints, how many were in a vehicle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that off the top of my head. So I wouldn't be able to even guess. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's the only question I had. Once again, I thank you, the audit and monitoring policy team. I also thank the rest of the team, the rest of the staff, as well as our directors of each department. We appreciate you. Right? Miss Tanya, is this my time now?
I did have one other thing.
All right. Cool.
So I'm glad that Commissioner DeBose asked the question that she did, because I did highlight for you all that I need you to be the community holding us down around the FOP contract. But another thing that you heard about when I was talking about the commissioner selection is that we are in budget season. For what we know right now, our budget is recommended to stay the same. If that is the case, it would be the second year that it stayed the same. And this really impacts our work. And so we are really going to be needing the community to kind of advocate on our behalf to get more resources. You know, Director Zajac and I talk a lot. And so we would love to be doing 100%, not 80%. And so there's a lot of other things. Director Grimmage and I have talked about our ability to continue to blanket parts of the city. And so we need more support in our outreach. So I know we've talked a lot about investigations. And then, you know, Director Guy and I have talked a lot about complaints. My vision is I would love an entire complaint unit. One of the things that you all voted for in the community was for us to be complaint central at some point in time, that we would be handling the majority of the complaints that come in about police misconduct. And so right now we don't have a unit. My staff is all hands on deck to take complaints, et cetera. So keeping a stagnant budget does not help us just be robust in all of the departments that we need to have additional staff. So I just want to put that plug out there as well. So we will probably be calling on you all to support us in some of our budget initiatives as city council is in this process and the mayor's office of hearing testimony from the various departments across the city regarding resources that they need. And so, of course, one of those departments is CPOC. And we would love to have an increase in our budget to be able to do the things that you all wanted us to do. So I just wanted to put that in there as well. So just follow us, folks. Instagram, Twitter, or X now, Facebook, and of course our website, as we are doing a lot in these next few months to try to get independent investigation, but to also get additional financial resources so that we can put more people resources on the ground to do what you all have asked us to do as an agency. And so with that, Chair, it's back to you.
Can I, before we go, I just want to also mention, there wasn't a slide by this, but our Director of Outreach, speaking of which, asked us just to remind folks that we have an event on Monday, our iconic Philly Women Town Hall, and I'll put that in the chat for the link. It'll be virtual. It's from 6 to 8 o'clock, and if you're available, please join us.
It should be phenomenal. We have some phenomenal women that we are honoring this year. So please tune in and hear from them. We have reached far and wide across the city, and all the women that have been nominated are phenomenal. So please join us on Monday.
Well, before we go to my favorite time of the meeting, I also would like to tell you, if you would like to review any meeting, any previous meeting, or any event happening or that has happened through CPOC, you can also look us up at the Citizens Police Oversight Commission on YouTube. And with that said, it is that time of the meeting, the community comment colloquy. So as I do every meeting, I will be reading this verbatim so there is no discrepancies in what I say from meeting to meeting. So with that being said, while I'm talking, if you do intend to speak, please raise your hands now. If you have a comment, please put it in the chat while I'm reading the colloquy. All right. We welcome public comment and feedback. Please address your comments to myself as the interim chair. If you would like to speak, please provide your full name. We will not be unmuting anonymous participants. If you are a member of the media, please identify yourself as such. You can indicate that you would like to speak by raising your hand or sending a request to the meeting host in the chat. You may also submit public comment through the chat. You will have 3 minutes to address the commissioners. I will keep the time and notify the board when those 3 minutes have elapsed. Any documents or follow-up communications can be submitted by email at cpoc@phila.gov. That is CPOC, the @ at PHILA.gov. Public comment should be limited to the topics covered in this meeting. All public commenters must refrain from offensive language, threats, and/or harassment. Participants that violate these instructions will be removed from the meeting. While we welcome your public comment and feedback, commissioners may not be able to respond to your questions or comments during tonight's meeting. Every attempt will be made to follow up by phone or email after the meeting. You can contact CPOC via email at cpoc@phila.gov, as I said earlier, or we have a phone number. You can call us at 215-685-0891. That is 215-685-0891. And with that being said, Danny, do we have any comments?
I don't see anything in the chat or any hands raised.
Okay. Commissioners, is there any comments you would like to add?
I have none except to continue to thank the staff for all it is that they do.
Yes.
And thank you for the presentation of the potential or the nominees for the place of commission. We're looking forward to the upcoming collaboration and just having a full board of commissioners. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I feel the growth. I'm sorry, Chair. I feel the growth and I see the growth in this commission. And I'm just looking forward to our public feeling more and experiencing more of what it is that we're aiming to do in the name of justice. Thank you again.
Thank you. Commissioners, I will ask you that we come up with our own questions outside of the public questions for the next what is it? Prospective commissioners meeting. Just questions that we have so we can be more so we can participate more and be more engaged in the next meeting. For the 5th, and that's the final perspective. I mean, I'm talking about the final candidate. Tanya, Executive Director McClary. This is the final candidate, right?
I think she's trying to unmute, but yes, it is, I believe.
Okay, thank you. And with that being said, do I hear a motion?
Sorry about that. Couldn't get my computer to unmute, but yes.
All right. Well, this is the final candidate. Let's be engaged. Let's have some questions for him, because as you see from the last meeting, we've been doing this, right? And that's not from the last meeting, but we've been doing this for quite some time now. And I think our questions will be more suited for a commissioner than many of the public questions that was provided last week. Although we appreciate your questions to the commissioners, it gave us an insight to who the commissioners was. I think as commissioners who have experienced the commission, we have questions. We should have questions for them as well. All right, I encourage you. And with that being said, do I hear a motion?
Chair, can I just say one thing?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I also just want to just remind the community, because people may not know that the candidates don't have any training about CPOC until after they become formal commissioners. So there may be some questions that people don't know the answer to because they aren't current sitting commissioners. And I just want to bring that up because I know there was some concern from various parts of the community about maybe some of the answers that the 4 that were there on the 18th gave. But I just want to remind the candidates that they don't get any formal training from the city, et cetera, until they are actually confirmed. So just keep that in mind when you're answering their questions. It may not be that they're being evasive or anything. They literally just may not know about all of the detailed work of the commission. But they will get ample training, as we have told all of them. So hopefully if this was 6 months from now, the answers will be very different.
Training is definitely needed. I remember when we went through this same process as commissioners, right? We heard through commissioners, you remember, we heard from the public, and it was once we got in the seat, we expected to answer the public's outcry for justice. So definitely we are here to not only aid to the training, but freshen up on some things ourselves. So I just ask you guys to remember how the public outcry was and the questions you received, and have your own questions this time that actually put some things in perspective and give the commissioners to come a little insight on what it is to be a CPOC commissioner.
And before we close, I definitely want to thank Director McCleary for sharing that perspective, because those questions were a bit of vain, even for the most trained commissioner. So I definitely thank you for that. And I'm sure that they were a bit overwhelmed by those questions during that panel.
With that being said, do I hear a motion?
I move that tonight's meeting be adjourned, having handled the business of the commission for this month.
That is Commissioner Melanie DeBose motioning that this meeting be adjourned. Does any commissioner second that motion?
Commissioner PA seconds the motion.
That is Commissioner PA seconding the motion. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, say aye. Aye. And with that being said, this commissioner meeting is now adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, you enjoy your night. We anticipate seeing you next time. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.
Good night.